I talk a lot about employee experience, and several years ago, I met this tiny startup called BlueBoard that was actually creating experiences for employees. And when I say tiny, I'm talking like 2 to 3 people in a loft in San Francisco. And today, BlueBoard is transforming the employee experience for many organizations around the world with something called experiential rewards. They offer a new way to recognize your people that goes beyond just dollars and cents. From in-home activities like building a DIY backyard greenhouse to out in the world adventures like learning to kitesurf or swimming with whale sharks, there's a one-of-a-kind adventure awaiting every employee across the globe. I actually remember when I first learned about BlueBoard many years ago, they had something called the James Bond experience. Plus, with BlueBoard's in-house concierge team, they handle all the logistics and each rewarded employee will feel like a true VIP. So if you're ready for a recognition program that delivers real value and actually focuses on the employee experience, then check out blueboard.com to learn more. Again, that is blueboard.com.
So we see hundreds of people a week doing things that represent one step towards something they've always wanted to do, whether that's taking a cooking class because they've always wanted to learn how to make pasta, right? Or they're taking a boxing class because that's the first step towards them getting in shape. BlueBoard can represent just a small nudge and step in someone's life that is them taking a big step in terms of who they are as a person. And at the end of the day, their company is the one that made that happen. How powerful and awesome is that? So that's why I love what we're doing.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of The Future of Work. My guest today is Taylor Smith, co-founder and CEO of BlueBoard. And Taylor and BlueBoard, I have known both of them for a very, very long time. I first met Taylor and BlueBoard, I think it was in 2015. I had an opportunity to visit them when they were in San Francisco. It was a tiny, tiny company at the time. I think it was just Taylor, his co-founder, and there were maybe 1 or 2 other people in there. And now the company has grown quite a bit. I think you're approaching almost 100 people now, which is crazy. And focused on one of my favorite topics, which is employee experience. So Taylor, thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's exciting to reconnect. I was looking back at my calendar from 2015, and matter of fact, when we met first, it was just Kevin and I. There were just 2 of us at the company. We only had 8 clients at that point. I think we'd almost sent 60 people out and about on adventures. We were stoked about that. And it was so long ago that the Warriors had not yet won an NBA championship in the 2000s. So yeah, it feels like forever ago. And like you said, things have been really good. We just passed 150 employees.
Wow.
We have hundreds of clients now. We're going to be sending 30 or 40,000 people out and about in over 50 countries this
Oh my
year.
God.
So the growth has been really great and really exciting. And I think it's because it strikes a chord, with people and where we are today. Yeah, we can dive into that later.
Wait, so you said 30 to 50,000, and when I first met you, it was how many? Like 8?
6. I think, so that's number of people that we're sending going out and about this year. It's going to be between 30 and 40,000. And we were, I think, up to 60.
Oh my God.
By the time, or back when we met. So just it's operating in a whole different scale. And it's something we're really
crazy.
proud of. And we're working hard to keep up with it too, because it's quite the challenge.
Yeah, no, I bet. Okay, well, so for people who are not familiar with BlueBoard, I don't know if there's any other company like it, honestly, that I have seen, but I thought it was one of the cooler concepts around employee experience that I've come across. But I'll let you explain it. What exactly is BlueBoard? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so what we do is we help companies celebrate their employees, but in the way that we just think is the most natural, which is, people show up to work every day, and what do? They're expending all of their time and their energy, and they're giving it to their company, right? And a lot of us, will work on long projects, we'll throw our lives into our work because we're proud of it, but that often isn't reciprocated from our company. So recognition, which is a huge industry, by the way,
Yeah.
it's tens of billions of dollars a year that companies spend on their employees. We see lots of gift cards. We see lots of merchandise. We see lots of
I used to get those
electronics.
when I was in the corporate world.
Totally, and it's so well intentioned. You know what I mean? No company is doing this because they think it's the wrong thing. But what we think is hey, there's a better thing to do. Is you could actually reciprocate and say, hey, we see you pouring your time and energy into our company. Let's give you some time and give you some and pay for you to go do something outside of work so you can recharge in the way that's like most meaningful to you. So what that means, we call ourselves an experiential recognition company. As a company, you can send a reward to one of your employees in 15 to 30 seconds. They log on, they receive the reward through email. We never share the dollar amount, so it's not transactional, but they'll basically receive a golden ticket that they can use on 20 to 30 experiences, no matter where they're located in the world. So if you wanted to recharge by taking your wife to get a couples massage, that's a great way to use a BlueBoard reward. Maybe you want to take the kids to a behind the scenes tour of the zoo to feed the giraffes because you haven't had as much family time recently because you've been working on your latest book. You could use your BlueBoard reward to do that. Or maybe you just need to like shock your system and you want a thrill. You could use it to go jump out of a plane with a friend and go tandem skydiving. So our mission is to get people out and about all over the world doing things to challenge their comfort zones, indulge in their passions, and to try new things. And the sweetest part of it is if you receive one of our rewards, you don't have to pay for it. It's paid for by your company. And yeah, so that's what we're up to BlueBoard, and we're pretty excited about it.
So it literally is an employee experience, like not just, the way some people talk about it. It's literally a cool experience for your people. And I remember 5 or 6 years ago, you had a James Bond experience. Do you remember that?
Yeah, so that's actually what got us on the map initially is one of the things we want to do is like, hey, employees are superheroes. People go above and beyond. And we were thinking a lot to ourselves, well, who does everyone want to be more like? Or what would be like a cool fantasy to live out for a day? And just around that time, like I think it was 6 years ago, the new James Bond movie was coming out.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my gosh, we should run an above and bond campaign, nominate a coworker who's gone above and bond. And the winner, which we had some people out of, I think, App Dynamics and HP were our two winners. Um, you got fitted for an evening gown or a tux. You got to jump out of a plane. We had an exotic car waiting for you on the runway. I think that one was some like special convertible Jaguar. You get to drive that the whole afternoon. And then you finish off the night with a bartending lesson where you learn to make the perfect martini. And so I think there's some, we have fun as a company because you get to
Yeah.
imagine, what people want to do, who they want to be, and we try to make that come to life for them. So yeah, the James Bond experience got some press and really got us on the map.
That's awesome. So I guess in your opinion, why are experiences so important now? Because obviously employee experience isn't a new topic. I mean, even my book came out, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago now, or I don't even remember. But it's been years. We've been talking about this stuff for years, but it seems like for some reason over the last little while, there's been a lot of traction. I mean, you're seeing this with your business. You're getting funding. A lot of people are wanting to be a part of it. Like what's going on that's putting employee experience really front and center for a lot of companies?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a few things, and also you should give yourself credit. You were early on that train. I think if we look back to the first time that we talked in 2015, employee experience was very new nomenclature, and it
Yeah.
was just sort of tip of the spear in terms of market penetration, but it's widely accepted now. And I think there's a couple of things going on. I think there's a huge war for talent right now. Obviously, companies are really feeling that, and while they're trying to always acquire and attain and attract the best new talent, they're also trying to figure out, well, how do we keep the great people that we already have? And we're feeling that more than ever. And then I think the last 18 months, throughout the pandemic and the changes that's brought to work, it's really highlighted for a lot of people. I think what their company did over the
Mm.
last 18 months to either, support them through this very difficult time or to actually like say, actually, you figure it out on your own. And so I think there's a big reshuffling where people are taking a look in the mirror and saying like, hey, does this company actually care about me outside of work? Um, before COVID, I think it was more normal to have, you could have your work self and then you could have your personal self,
Yeah.
and you could maintain the separation there. But with all of us at home working from Zoom, that barrier disappeared, and it's like our whole selves were thrown into work,
Yeah.
and there babies on Zoom calls, there's cats walking around in the background, like you started to get a window into people's lives. And so some companies, I think, jumped at the opportunity and said, wow, like our employees are like people, and let's support them, let's support their whole selves and encourage them to bring their whole selves to work. and some companies, didn't engage in that way, and people talk, and I think people really got a feeling over this past year on whether or not, their company cared for them or not. And a lot of people are looking for new opportunities right now.
I love actually the story of how you guys were created. So maybe you can share the story of why you decided to create this company, because I can certainly relate to this back when I had a full time job many, many years ago. When I would be recognized, they would just hand me a gift card, or it's like a sweater with the company's logo on it, or like a notebook. And to be honest, it's not like these things were bad. Like you said, they were well intentioned, but how many people really
Hmm.
want to be recognized with a sweater that has a company logo on it, or with, a gift card for, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like the nice or the proper way to recognize people, like you said, who are giving so much of themselves to the organization. It kind of feels like a lazy thing to do, doesn't it? I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it is lazy, but it's also something, it's behavior that, has been like developed and institutionalized over decades, right? So
Yeah.
companies have been recognizing in the same way for a long time. And so, I don't blame companies for it. I don't blame managers for it. It's a difficult problem to solve. And I think I can sort of walk you through the founding story,
Yeah.
how we came
Yeah.
to like
I was just
what we
thinking,
are
by the way,
today.
before you jump into that, I was just like thinking of, for my wife or for one of my kids for like their birthdays. If I if I just like gave them a gift card, I'm pretty sure my wife would have just like, what the hell is this? Yeah, who are you?
Yeah,
So, and I always say
totally.
that being a part of an organization is just like being in a relationship, where you should really understand what your employees care about, what they value, who they are, and then you should be able to create experiences based on that. So I think that mentality, that approach should very much be prevalent inside of companies.
100%, because you're totally right. Like, who gives you the gift card as a gift, right? It's like the aunt or uncle that's sort of removed and they don't know anything
They
about
see you
you.
once a year on those
And
weird holidays, and
yeah, and no, nobody wants to feel that way. And companies should be on the other side of the spectrum, and especially like your manager that you report to, because like, we spend like hundreds and thousands of hours, with the people that we work with. So presumably they should know things about us, about how we spend our time and what we care about outside of work. And so, just to pull in the thread of why we started the company, when I worked at Accenture, they were very well intentioned with their recognition, and it was something that they talked about and that they delivered, but it just never felt that great. And so the specific story that I remember is I got placed on this really interesting project in Dallas, working for a large company, high visibility role. I was the only, financial analyst working with the CFO of a public company, and it was like an amazing career opportunity. And many people have opportunities like this in their lifetime where it's like, wow, I really want to dig in and just do my best work because what
yeah,
this will mean for me personally and for my career. And so, I did what any young professional would do out of college. I just drove myself into the ground. I worked 80 to 90-hour weeks for about 3 months. I was flying to Dallas every week for months. I was eating cafeteria food, 3 meals a day. I wasn't sleeping a whole lot, and by the end of that project, I was in really rough shape. I'd gained a bunch of weight. I hadn't been sleeping a lot. I was sort of a miserable person. And my manager called me into his office and he said, Taylor, you did an amazing job. The partners and I were really impressed with how much you could carry, being so young, and we wanted to recognize you. And he like handed me an Amex gift card, which was not like a trivial amount. He gave me a $500 gift card. And like that's why I say that like it was very well intentioned. You know what I mean? That being said, I'm a pretty analytical person. I'd worked hundreds of hours of overtime. So in that moment, my mind was like, oh, wow, my worth only $1.25 an hour to my employer. Like it just didn't feel good. And I, I was talking to Kevin, who's my co-founder, and we were living together at the time about this. And he had sort of a funny point of view. He said like, "Hey, it's crazy that you're complaining to me about this on a Friday night. Like your company gave you $500. Like that sounds pretty sweet to me." And he's like, "If you think about it, that means your manager had to go to HR to get a gift card. At some point, they received training from corporate. That means corporate has a budget." And he was sort of lining out for me like, "There's all these like steps that happen that enabled this to happen. So it's actually like a great thing that you got a gift card." And then we started brainstorming. We're like, what would have been better? And we decided if my manager had pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you've been traveling a bunch. Why don't you take your girlfriend on, maybe take her on a couples massage this Saturday. We'll set something up for you at Knob Hill Spa. You guys can just relax and recharge. And it's important for you to spend some time together because you've been traveling so much." I would have been thrilled. You know what I mean? Like I would
Yeah.
have thought Accenture was the coolest company on the planet. Like my girlfriend would have thought that. I'm sure I would have told my friends about that. And there would have been all this goodwill that came from that. And an experience like that costs less than $500. And so that was sort of our insight into starting BlueBoard as a company was managers already want to do like what we can make happen today. Companies want to do it, but there's never a scalable way to do it. In fact, like, if you were trying to send someone and you had an employee that's doing an awesome job, you'd probably try and figure out what they like doing. You might figure out, okay, they want to go to a spa. Let's look at three of them. Let's find their availability. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you've spent like 40 minutes or an hour, and you're gonna give up, and you're gonna say, you know what? I'm just gonna give them a gift card, and like the whole cycle like reinforces and repeats. And so our whole thing with Blueboard is no, we will get people out and about to an adventure that they love, and all you have to do as a manager is spend 15 seconds sending them a reward, and Blueboard takes care of the rest,
Yeah.
to the tune of tens of thousands of people out and about all across the world. So
So I think
yeah, long-winded story, but
so
yeah.
I think this brings up an interesting point because obviously I think one of the challenges when it comes to employee experience is it's very subjective. Like what I care about is going to be different than what Taylor cares about, which is going to be different than what Erica cares. Like everyone cares about different things. And there might be some people who do care about cash and some people who do care about driving a Jaguar and jumping out of a plane. So how do you,
Yeah.
because some people even who are listening to this and watching this are saying like, Taylor is out of his mind. $500, I would have been jumping up and down for joy. That guy's nuts.
Totally.
He's so entitled, blah, blah, blah. Like, how do you balance
Totally.
so many different people who work for a company and being able to create an experience that everybody's going to care about? I mean, that's at least one of the biggest questions that I keep getting is
Yeah.
how do you figure that out?
Yeah, totally. I think there's two ways to that we could think about it. I think the first thing is that employee choice is really, really important. So when we started the company, it was structured a little bit differently. Like as a manager, you could like say, I'm sending you skydiving, right? Or I'm sending you to language classes. And as it turns out, people didn't like that
I
much
remember
because
that.
while I may be an adventure,
Yeah, I remember that. Like,
yeah,
you didn't really have much of a
right?
choice, right? It was just kind of like, this is where I'm sending you.
Yeah, and like while that is good and great, that then puts the onus and the pressure on managers to feel like they know exactly what their employees need. And what we learned like over time and messing around with the product is that, while I may be an adrenaline junkie, that may not be what I need right now. And who knows better what I need right now as an employee to recharge than me.
Yeah.
And so we changed how our product worked, and now it's when an employee receives a reward, it's they can choose between 25 to 30 options per city that they're in. So I think that's the first important thing. I think that's one thing. The second thing that we spend a lot of time on is like, well, who are the people who get our rewards? What demographic are they? Where do they live? What do they care about? And we do have an experience curation team, and that's their sole job is to make sure that we have a bundle of experiences and like meaningful choices to a bunch of different personas that we map to. And so, I can give you an example of a sort of like a more obvious choice. Younger people, people out of college, up to millennials, we tend to value novelty. So if you look at the redemption stats for younger people, it's all about what can I put on Instagram? What have I done that my friends haven't done? And novelty is a big driver of choice.
Interesting.
When you get into older generations, they actually view the choice quite differently. It's less about novelty and it's more about this idea of quality time. So it's not about, oh, I need to go to this painting class because I've never gone painting before. The mentality is, I haven't spent time with my friend in several months, and I know that he's really into painting. Maybe I should sign up for this and we could go painting together. So the choices that different generations make are predicated on different axes. And so we've done a ton, of research into that, and our product sort of mirrors that decision-making cycle. And that's something where I can confidently say that like, hey, people find things that they like on Blueboard because we're not just like throwing up everything under the sun. We're not Groupon just like crawling and looking for every last deal that we can throw online. We're working with the best, top rated small businesses in every market that are just amazing at their craft and have this passion that they're trying to share with the world. So I think we approach it in a way that makes it very
Yeah.
consumable and very exciting to people.
Is what if somebody does want cash? Can they? Is that just like up to the discretion of the manager to just give them a gift card or a Blue Board experience?
Yeah, so yeah, on BlueBoard, that's one of the things that we're always going to stick to our guns. Like if you get a BlueBoard reward, you can redeem it for some quality time outside of work, and we don't let people send gift cards or cash through our
Okay.
platform. I think the caveat here, though, that's really important is, you know, some listeners might say like, hey, well, my workforce is making minimum wage, right? And like like to them, it's meaningful to get $500 in cash. And to that, I say, I 100% agree. And I commend you for doing that because it comes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like if someone doesn't have enough money for rent or to feed themselves, like it would be an egregious thing to say, hey, go fly a plane over the Golden Gate Bridge. It would just signal that you're like
Yeah.
totally
Out of
out
touch.
of whack as an employer. Yeah, out of touch. And so like we do work best with, knowledge workers, and we tend to sell to companies that are in industries where they do have like a substantial budget for rewards,
Okay.
recognition, perks, benefits, programs for their employees.
So obviously you work with a lot of different brands and organizations. Can you talk about what are you hearing from a lot of the organizations who want to work with you? Are there certain trends that they keep coming to you with? Are there certain things that they keep looking for? Like, what are you hearing from all these companies out there?
Yeah, 100%. I think like one of the biggest words that we've been hearing early on and like getting stronger into this year is the whole idea of employee well-being,
Yeah, okay.
which I think is really exciting because that again is speaking to this notion of whole self and companies realizing that, hey, we can't just create programs that cater to like Jacob, like the worker, right? Like Jacob and his whole self, like Jacob is a husband, he is a father, he is someone who has hobbies outside of work. There's so many different facets to who Jacob is. And I think what companies are wrestling with is like, oh, we have this responsibility and this opportunity to support people's well-being just outside of their work selves. And I think that's something where, when you look at the world with that context and from that angle, things like Blue Board start to float to the top of your consciousness, right?
Okay.
We have companies that spend, millions of dollars on gift cards and points and electronics, and then you try to tie this idea of how we're recognizing our employees today to the idea of well-being, and like just the connection isn't there, right? And so I think companies are starting to look very authentically at their people programs and look at it through the lens of, hey, is this increasing the well-being of my people? Which is something that is, drastically different than even 3 years ago.
Interesting. So I guess when you say well-being, what falls into the well-being category?
Well, it's a good. It's sort of, so I guess like the analogous sort of term that I used is whole self. But well-being, like I mean, it means, and it spans inside and outside of work, right? So like well-being could come from like your trajectory at work, the training and learning and
Yeah.
development opportunities you have, the mental health resources you have, like all of these like help you be a great employee. And then there's a bunch of like, other fringe benefits on the side and other benefits that sort of can support people outside of work as well. And I think what's really interesting in the market right now is the leading tech companies do a little bit of everything, like everything under the sun. There's so many different benefits, and it's challenging for smaller companies that don't have the war chests to really keep up. And so, one thing that companies come to us and talk about is like, well, what can I do? I can't do everything, and we always advise companies to look inwards, right? And to really think about like who are you as a company and what can you offer. If you can offer like this amazing comp package, maybe you could be a leader in like flexible work arrangements, right? Or maybe if you um, can't, I mean, there is basically just a bunch of trade-offs you need to make as a company, and like we advise companies to think about what is authentic to you and what can you offer
Yeah.
that is different, because you never want to try and just offer broadly like what's better and to do more, because that's just like a losing proposition in the long run.
Do you find that there needs to be some sort of alignment between like actions and values? So, for example, I could be a leader at a company, maybe not treat you very well, and then all of a sudden give you a blue board, like, a golden ticket that says, hey, go enjoy this experience. And as an employee, you're kind of like, wait a minute, you don't treat me very well. This is all very surprising. So, it kind of
Hmm.
like, there needs to be, I think, a line. And I don't know if you guys get involved with this or if you hear this from organizations or from leaders, but it seems like leaders need to genuinely know their people, care about them, and value them, and have some sort of alignment between that and the experience they create, right? Otherwise, it's kind of like you're not very nice to me. I'm
Yeah,
very surprised why I'm getting this.
totally. And I'd say like that just reeks of a lack of authenticity,
Yeah,
and the relationships that we build with our managers and like our employers, it's something that's built off of many interactions, right? And it's sort of like you're making sense of all the interactions that you've had over time, and you're then judging like, is this something that I want to be part of as someone who's great at my job? And I think it definitely needs to add up, and it should be authentic, and that should be best. On the other side of the spectrum, though, imagine someone who has looked in the mirror and they're like, "Oh, I have been a bad manager, and I haven't heard about this tool, and like maybe I should do something nice, so I should use BlueBoard." So like BlueBoard could also, it could also represent a company or manager coming to terms with the fact that like, oh, we actually haven't done a great job, and we're trying to make things better, and here's a real tangible step that I'm taking,
okay.
which is actually a nice thing too. But like, that story arc makes less sense. But I do think just like in general, if a company decides to use BlueBoard, it is a good thing, and it is an offering of goodwill because it doesn't happen automatically. Like a manager still needs to take the action to like send the reward and go into the system and do it. So there is
Yep.
something good there. But whether or not it adds up with prior interactions is a different question.
Okay, that makes sense. If you're a people first company, then you have got to check out BlueBoard's experiential rewards. BlueBoard is a new way to recognize your top talent that goes beyond just dollars and cents through their choice of a curated experiential reward. If you're ready for a recognition program that delivers real value and actually focuses on the experiences of your people, then check out blueboard.com to learn more. Again, that is blueboard.com. So I guess taking a step back really quick, I'm curious, just when you look at the world of work and talent and employee experience, what are the big trends that you are paying attention to? Because obviously you're running a company of 150 people, so you're probably thinking about what are you going to be doing as a business based on the future? Your clients are probably telling you stuff. Like, what are the big future of work trends or talent trends that you're looking at?
Yeah, totally. I think one thing that we're consumed with and trying to figure out, and that continues to change every week at this point, is the whole return to work
Yeah.
question, and where we're going to end up on the spectrum between being fully remote and demanding that everyone come into the office. And it's not going to surprise you, like many companies, we're going to be somewhere in the middle. But we're going to do something that works best for our company and what we're trying to deliver to our clients. And I think this is something that it really is like a radical change that trickles down to many parts of even our organization. And we're small, we're only 150 people. Um, but in some cases, we have opened up recs that previously would have only been open to our San Francisco and San Diego offices, but we're opening them, you know, remotely across the United States. And we're getting access to a ton of talent that otherwise like we just wouldn't have seen and wouldn't have considered even a year ago. So that's something that's been a really positive change for us. Um, I think something else to consider that's like interesting around that same fact is globally, it's changing the way that US companies can interact with global talent. Because I think before it was safe to say we do all of our development in Ukraine. We have great partners out there and a great team that we've built. And the rate at which salaries are growing in Ukraine is just completely out of whack right now.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's double what we were paying just 2 years ago, and that's because now companies are opening their aperture even wider and they're looking globally for talent. So it's going to be a challenge for smaller companies. And so I think where that's changing how companies act is, hey, if it's going to get more expensive and more difficult to acquire talent, we need to be smarter about how we keep the people that we already have. And so in a lot of our calls, like there is more energy and there's more talk around retention and trying to keep our best people. Just at a volume that we hadn't heard in the past. It's definitely top of mind for a lot of companies. Um,
Yeah,
and I'm curious, what are you?
I was gonna
Oh,
say
go
that
ahead.
that's been in the news a lot. I mean, I have a team of 10 people that I work, well, 11 people, and we're all
Hmm.
virtual. And I mean, I have freelancers who I work with, and people who listen to the show know that. But they're based all over the United States. I have people in the Philippines. I
Hmm.
have people in Serbia and Macedonia. Somebody I work with in Bangladesh, and again, a couple of people in the United States as well. And I mean, for me as a business owner, a small business owner, it's been great because I've been able to attract and retain top talent. I have a designer
Hmm.
who I've been working with for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years now that I randomly found online, and he's still an integral part of the team. So for me, it's been huge. But we've been seeing a lot of this like debate, like you said, return to the office. Should we have hybrid work? We've seen some people who are even quitting, just removing themselves from the workforce altogether because they don't want to be a part of organizations who aren't putting the voice of the employee first, so to speak. So I think it's a very interesting. I don't want to call it like an employee revolution time, but that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like employees are getting a lot more voice, a lot more power,
Yeah.
and they're starting to really speak up. And I think they're doing so now more than ever because COVID is, in a lot of cases, an actual matter between life and death and safety. Whereas before, it felt like for a lot of leaders, probably as a matter of convenience or as a matter of, productivity, and it wasn't as big of a case as much as it is for safety and life and death. Like that's the biggest case that you can make, right?
Hmm.
So I'm very curious to see, like you, what'll happen over the next year or so. I mean, I don't know. Are you seeing a lot of your clients? Are they opening back up their offices or moving towards hybrid work?
A lot of people, most are moving towards hybrid work. We have some that have gone fully remote. One of the, and that's interesting too, because that provides new opportunities for us as a company. It's like we're the only company, as far as I know, that's able to deliver like a personalized experience in so many countries and so many cities. And that actually, like the way the world of work is going, bodes really well for us because we're set up to support remote workforces where if someone were to try to compete with us tomorrow, they would have challenge building up the inventory and marketplace side. And so there will be, I think, new vendors and companies that pop up that are very well suited for this, remote workplace.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm really interested to see like how many and how long it takes for people to come back into work and what this whole transition period is going to look like because early on when people have like strong opinions, it's a world of extremes, right? It seemed like it was going to be a war of remote first and remote only versus like 5 days back in the office, and it was like a very extremist sort of conversation. But now like we're in the deeper part of the conversation where how does this actually all look when rubber meets the road, like when we're back into more of a normalized state. And one thing that I think is interesting for your listeners to think about that we think a lot about at the company is remote work really represents on one side of the spectrum the ultimate convenience. And I'm very much like a raw in the office type of person. And I realized that I loved working from home 5 days a week, like just the convenience of being able to
Yeah.
like, oh, I have a short break here, I can go for a walk, or I can do my laundry, or I can even roll out of bed a little bit later today because I don't have to log on until 8:30. These are all conveniences that I just wasn't used to, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of meaning to this. I think on the other side of the spectrum, you have the whole idea of like connection and in-person connection and the value of being around other people and what that means for, like the argument of like whiteboarding and being in a room together and like what does that mean to like be together as a team because we're social creatures.
Yeah.
And I do think a lot of people who are pounding the table for remote work are actually undervaluing connection and not realizing what they're going to miss out on by, and I'm not saying again 5 days a week, but being in the office a day or two a week to be around the people that you're presumably working on a mission with for your company. And so I do think people are overvaluing convenience. I think it's like a natural human trait, right? Like phones, we could and should be more connected to people than ever, but we feel more alone and isolated than ever.
Yeah.
And to me, going to a fully remote workforce is going to leading us further down that path. And I just don't think people realize that right now. So I'm hoping that people leaders out there are able to, stand up for what they believe to be right. But I do think like a healthy amount of connection in person with coworkers is a really healthy thing,
Yeah.
even though it's harder to see, especially after the convenience we've been
Do
afforded
you guys
over the
still
past
have all of your
year and a half.
offices, or have you guys gone at least temporarily fully remote?
We None of our offices are open right now, and we've had some soft openings just to like let people get in the office, but we're not expecting people to be back in the office until next February, which is
Wow.
our fiscal year start, and then it's not going to be 5 days a week. It never was. We're actually a 4 day a week in the office company, and we're going to reduce that even further. We just don't know exactly logistically how it's going to work yet.
Interesting. Well, actually, you brought up something just there. So 4 days a week in the office or 4 days work week?
Oh, yeah, I knew as soon as
Because
I said that, I
it's
knew I
also
wasn't
something
crisp
that's been
enough.
in the news, right? Is a lot of companies, well,
It has been.
experimenting with 4-day work weeks.
Yeah, totally. So we weren't one of the 4-day work week companies. We had work from home Wednesdays always as like a day to break up the middle of the week where you could go get a doctor's appointment, go do your laundry, whatever you needed to do at home, and that just set a really nice working cadence. But I do think the 4-day a week concept is interesting. Yeah, we've been asked about it internally as well as something we'd consider. So yeah, it's definitely out there and in the minds of people for sure.
So shifting back a little bit towards employee experience, one of the questions that, and I don't know if you get this question a lot, but it's oftentimes who owns it? Who's responsible for the employee experience? Is it HR? Is it operations? Is it leadership teams? So how do you answer that and help people think through that?
Okay, no, it's a really good question. It's something we wrestle with because similarly, so recognition is a subset of overall employee experience. You would be amazed to know the various teams at various companies that own recognition. It's different in every company. And, we see the same for like this idea of employee experience, even though it is a newer concept, it has legs and companies are doing their best
Yeah.
to deliver it. Instead of, isolating like who should own it, I think like the clear point here is there should be an owner. And I
Uh,
think in some companies there isn't an owner and it's it's a oh, no, I think they do it or I think they're part of it. If you don't have like a cohesive strategy and someone that's owning it, it's really hard to deliver and it's hard to be thoughtful about like what employee experience means to you as a company. So I think like I hope I'm not sidestepping the question, but just having an owner is step one. And there's a fair amount of clients that we talk to where like there is no clear owner, which is
mm.
why it's hard to deliver in the first place.
So it's not always HR.
It's Okay, for the heavy majority, it is HR, but HR could be taking on a variety of names at this point, which could be, your people
Yeah.
operations. We've seen chief culture officers. We've seen human resources. Like, there's so many terms now, but I would say broadly, yes,
Okay.
definitely under the HR
Yeah, there's a lot
umbrella.
of people related things that are out there. One of the other questions that I keep getting asked is how do you balance just like fun stuff versus creating deeper change inside of an organization? Because obviously it's one thing to give somebody a cash gift or cash or a gift card or a blue board experience, but it's another thing to really take a step back to create employee experiences for your people where you understand the moments that matter, you
Hmm.
understand culture and physical space and
Hmm.
technology. Do you find that you're a part of those conversations too when it comes to designing employee experiences and that Blueboard is maybe like a part of that or are people just coming to you for, the recognition piece?
Yeah, 100%. Our best customers, come to us because of that and that they have a holistic strategy where they want to do what's best for their people and it's thoughtful and it's intentional and Blueboard could be a major part of that strategy. So I wouldn't say that anyone necessarily buys Blueboard by accident, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
and I would think in the best case of scenarios, like in the way that we talk about what we're offering, which is like, hey, support your employees' whole selves, like, let people spend quality time outside of the office in the way that they choose. Like, just like marketing like that and like talking about what we do, I think spurs a lot of thought for organizations because like you said in the beginning of this call, like for some people it's a stretch. It's like, oh, that's wild. Like, would our company even do that? And they might take us as a data point of like something that's newer and like hot and meaningful in the market right now, and that might actually inform their higher level strategy. And then they may come back to us as a customer,
Yeah.
call it like 2 3 years later, and we actually have a term for that. We call them boomerangs. We have so many large companies that first heard from us, engaged with us, spoke with us at a conference 3+ years ago, and then they come back and they're like, "Hey,
Interesting.
heard this. It was really inspiring." Um, and like to us, that's great, right? Because we're helping spur that conversation. And so yeah, I think it happens in those two ways.
Well, one of the things I always tell HR professionals is, I think I always thought that HR is it's a very, very exciting place to be in, but at the same time, never before have we needed HR to not think and act and be like HR. And so I think moving
Yeah.
away from a lot of this traditional human resources to focusing on human transformation, from not having a seat at the table to having a seat at the table. Like there's just this big transformation happening in the world of
Mhm.
HR. And I think it's exciting that there are companies like yours out there that are helping HR professionals just think differently about what's possible when it comes to employee experience, because it's so easy to get stuck. How old is HR even? I don't even know how old the field is, but it has not changed in decades. And so I think now it's finally getting a huge, huge wake up call, which is great for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. It's great for all of us, that are working for a living, which is most, if not all of us, you know what I mean? And I think your comments about the field are right on. And I think what's new and exciting is now, like within the field of HR, like there's this whole idea of like creativity that you can have to create employee experience, because employee experience doesn't create itself.
Yeah.
Like you need to create it thoughtfully. And so there is a whole new set of paths for people who are dreamers and creators and who want to be super strategic and have more like they have more like lateral ability to move within HR and to like shake up how companies operate in a way that's like so different from like what you said, which was like the compliance nature of
Yeah.
HR from the past. So yeah, no, it's a great time. Even friends of mine, that I've known from my days back at Cal, and people who have gone into finance and management consulting and things that like early on in career seemed like a really great paths. I have friends now that are in HR in strategic roles in companies that are like loving it. Um, and I do think like a few decades ago, those people wouldn't have found themselves in this field,
Yeah.
which speaks volumes and something we're really excited about.
Well, maybe to wrap up, because we're near the top of the hour here, for people who are listening and watching, do you have any advice or suggestions for them if they're starting to think about employee experience and what they can start doing for their people? What should they be doing? How do these conversations begin?
Oh, how do these conversations begin? That's always a tough one. I think the best conversations, they start from a high level and they start from an aspirational sense in terms of what type of company do we want to be, and also like who are we as a company, and getting like really solid on that from a core level, and also engaging like leadership in terms of like getting and maybe uncovering the truth of who you are as a
Mm,
company so that you can figure out the best way forward. And so, you're going to be glad you didn't ask me a question about company values, because I could talk about company values for an hour, or the idea of having a mission that's meaningful to a lot of people, or how to pitch people on a vision. These foundational things, I think, really set the tone for who you are as a company. And once you can look in the mirror and say, yes, that's me, that's accurate, then you design your programs and your employee experience around that, which is how we get to the authenticity that we were talking about earlier. So I do think it starts with, a long look in the mirror, the good parts, the bad, and the ugly, and just coming to terms with who you are as an organization and where you want to go. And then, yeah, you come up with a path forward that is, above all else, authentic to who you are.
perfect. Well, before we wrap up, why don't you share maybe one of your favorite one or two experiences that you guys offer? Is there any that come to mind that you think are super cool or crazy?
Yeah, instead of going the route of like the craziest things that you can do, because like we can do a lot of that. Like we could send you sandboarding in the Moroccan desert. We could send you to chase the northern lights in Iceland. One
Oh
of the
wow,
things that I think is
it's
really powerful.
pretty hardcore stuff,
Oh yeah,
man.
yeah, but like so we do the extremes, but I'm gonna focus on the simple because I think that's something that's really powerful. I think all of us have things that we're interested in that we want to do that we don't necessarily make the time for. So I'm sure like three or five people who want to take their 200-hour yoga teacher training, or there's people who want to learn Mandarin or Spanish, and there's all these things that people want to do. But often in life, it's really hard to take that first step
Mm,
and to actually go to that first yoga class or to sign up for the Mandarin training. And so what I like about BlueBoard is that people can choose simple things like taking a surfing lesson. Like I used the Blue Board reward to take a surfing lesson when I moved to San Diego.
mm.
And like that 1 hour class gave me then the energy and the momentum to, oh, I bought a board eventually. And then eventually I went once every 2 weeks. And now I'm surfing 2 days a week. But if my company didn't pay for me to go take that first step, I wouldn't be surfing 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And so like we see hundreds of people a week doing things that represent one step towards something they've always wanted to do, whether that's taking a cooking class because they've always wanted to learn how to make pasta, right? Or they're taking a boxing class because that's the first step towards them getting in shape. Like BlueBoard can represent just a small nudge and step in someone's life that is them taking a big step in terms of who they are as a person. And at the end of the day, their company is the one that made that happen. Like how powerful and awesome is that? So that's why I love what we're doing, man. I get a kick out of it. We have, 1,000 people almost out every week now across the world, blueboarding as we call it, hashtag blueboarding, going on adventures on behalf of their companies. And we're just really excited about that. And
That's super cool.
yeah.
Well, where can people go to learn more about you and BlueBoard if they want to check it out for themselves and their company? Anything that you want to mention, feel free to do so.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely check us out at www.blueboard.com. Blue like the color, board like a surfboard. On Instagram, we're at BlueBoard Inc., INC, and hashtag blueboarding. Has now thousands of posts of employees going on adventures all over the world, so you can get a taste of how people are living their lives outside the office. But Jacob, I have to ask you real quick. We always ask people, a blueboarding moment means a time where you've challenged your comfort zones, indulged in a passion, or tried something new. What's a blueboarding moment you've had over the past, I don't know, year or two?
Playing in a chess tournament.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I've been passionate about chess for a long time, but I never actually played competitively in any tournaments. So got myself out of my comfort zone, and before the pandemic hit, I was playing regularly every Tuesdays, and now that I moved to Southern California, I'm going to get back into it again. But it's the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done is sitting across from somebody else and playing a game of chess for 4 to 6 hours. So that's been my
totally.
BlueBoard experience.
Yeah, that's ultimate vulnerability, right? Because that's just you yourself out there against someone else. No, I love that. That's great.
Yeah,
Thanks for
in
sharing.
your own little thoughts, just roaming around.
Yeah, totally. Awesome, man. Well, this has been great to catch up. Thanks again for the opportunity. I'm glad to hear you're doing so well and you're enjoying your move of your own and that things are going great for you.
Yeah, likewise. It's been great speaking to you and catching up. And thanks everyone again for tuning in. Make sure to check out BlueBoard. They're pretty easy to find. They're all over social media as well if you use the hashtag. And my guest again has been Taylor Smith, who is the co-founder and CEO of BlueBoard. And I will see all of you next week. Thanks again for tuning into the show. And don't forget to go to 6leadershiptrends.com to grab a copy of my brand new PDF, which is going to walk you through the 6 trends that are shaping leadership and what it means to be a leader. And it will also give you action items for what you should be doing for each one of these 6 trends to adapt and evolve so that you can be a better leader in the future of work. Again, that is 6leadershiptrends.com. You can either spell out the number 6 in the URL or just use the number 6 in the URL. They will both take you to the same place. Thanks again for tuning in.